Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2. Hare Krishna. Today we'll go through Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this chapter is titled Contents of the Gita Summarized. And it's the second longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, and it has 72 verses. Srila Prabhupada and the other acharyas, they all say that chapter 2 is a summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada also described chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita like the ABC of spiritual life. All the basics of devotional service are included in this chapter. So in the first chapter, Arjuna became completely overwhelmed by grief. He gave Krishna many reasons why he didn't want to fight, based on his logic, quoting the scriptures, and he made the decision that giving up the war was the only solution to his problem. But now, in the beginning of this chapter, as Arjuna's friend, Krishna starts to chastise Arjuna. He says, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy." So he calls Arjuna a fool. And after Krishna speaks, Arjuna carefully thinks about his situation. He understands that he cannot solve this problem by himself. And he has to turn to a guru to relieve all his doubts. Srila Prabhupada said that in this material world, there's always some kind of perplexity, some kind of problem, one after the other. Krishna said, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So one should approach a bona fide spiritual master who can guide one to execute the purpose of life. So now we have a turning point in Arjuna from verse 7. Arjuna, now he surrenders unto Lord Krishna and he says, "Now I'm your disciple, I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me." So now Krishna turns from Arjuna's charioteer and friend to his guru, and he begins instructing Arjuna. In the later chapters of the Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that he's speaking Bhagavad Gita to him because Arjuna is his dear devotee and friend, and that's Arjuna's qualification. So then that's followed by verse 11. Now Srila Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita starts from verse 11 because now Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Krishna starts to speak. So it's a guru's duty to chastise his student, and what does Krishna say? He points out Arjuna's problem, he calls him a fool, and he tells him that wise men lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Then he gives Arjuna 3 different reasons why he has to fight, from verse 12 to 36. The first point that Krishna makes is all about the nature of our soul, our true identity as a soul, and how the soul will always eternally exist, and how when the body changes, the Atma, the soul, never changes. He says, Na tueva ham jatu nasam na tuam neme janadipa. Like, there was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. What does this mean? That means that we're not the body, and the body never lasts. Then who are we? We're the soul. And what's the soul's nature? Krishna says, for the soul there's neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So, Krishna is pointing out that neither the Pandavas nor the Kauravas will be killed on the battlefield. And when we say that someone has passed away, it means that their soul has passed on to a new body, to a different destination. So if the real self can't be killed, then Arjuna has no reason to lament. He has no reason to refuse to fight. And Krishna says that even if the soul was not eternal, and even if it had a beginning and an end, Arjuna has still no reason to lament, because anyway, whatever disappears will appear again, and whatever appears will disappear. And so Krishna reminds Arjuna that anyway, for Bhishma and Drona and everyone else in this world, death is inevitable. So whether Arjuna fights or not, everyone will have to move on. The second point that Krishna makes is about Arjuna's duty. Krishna points out Arjuna's duty as a Kshatriya, and he reminds Arjuna that he cannot run away from his duty. As a Kshatriya, his duty is more important than his personal loss and gains. He tells Arjuna that he should fight to maintain religious principles. And a righteous war will open the door to heaven. But if he runs away from the battlefield and avoids the war, he'll get sinful reactions. And the last point that Krishna makes is about Arjuna's reputation. Krishna tells Arjuna that if he chooses not to fight, he'll lose his reputation and he'll be called a coward. So in this way, Krishna persuades Arjuna to fight. So now Krishna starts to explain the concept of karma yoga, about being detached and at the same time performing one's duty. So verses 40 to 46, Krishna talks about the benefits of performing karma yoga, performing our duty for the pleasure of Krishna and not being attached to the results. Krishna says, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So then, after Krishna has told Arjuna about the benefits of karma yoga, now comes the principle of karma yoga. Krishna says that you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So, why should we not be attached to the results of our actions? Because when we perform actions, whether it's good or bad, we'll always get our karma. And when we get our karma, one situation leads to another situation, and the cycle of birth and death is never ending. But if we try to avoid it by not performing our duty, then our situation will be even worse. So what to do? By doing our duty, we'll get karma, but by ignoring it, our situation will be even worse. Krishna gives us a solution. If we do our actions without being attached to the results, and if we do it while being absorbed in Krishna, there will be no reactions. So that's from verses 47 to 43. It's about the concept of karma yoga. Then, verse 54. Arjuna asks Krishna about the symptoms of one who has all of this knowledge about the self and who practices karma yoga. Krishna mentions many characteristics of that kind of soul. For the rest of the verses, Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind is purified, he finds satisfaction in the self, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So, Krishna, he points out one who is in self-knowledge. He is free from all desires, and he's always satisfied with himself, and his happiness is not dependent on outside things. He's free from qualities like attachment and anger and hatred and depression that are mentioned in verses 56 and 57. There's an analogy that compares the wise man's mind as the ocean in verse 70. An ocean is never affected by whether it's the rainy season or the dry season. It's never affected by all the rivers flowing in it. The ocean is always steady. It always stays the same. So, Srila Prabhupada compares a devotee who is fixed in Krishna consciousness as the ocean. He's as steady as the ocean. He's never disturbed by the desires or sense gratification. So, the second chapter discusses 4 main topics. Firstly is Arjuna's surrender, from text 1 to 10. Then, knowledge of the soul about one's true identity, from text 11 to 38. About karma yoga, text 39 to 53. And finally, the characteristics of a man who has this knowledge, from text 54 till the end of the chapter. So since this chapter is mainly about Krishna instructing Arjuna about the soul and his true identity about the soul, we can remember one key word for this chapter, which is our identity. So that's the end of chapter 2. Hare Krishna.